What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of the Bean Counter podcast. I was hoping to get this episode out yesterday, but as we speak, my internet is still out. It went out last night, and hopefully I'm able to get it back up relatively soon so I can get this uploaded on Monday, which is today, so later on Monday. But anyways, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about the NFL this past week. We're going to be talking college football and LSU Bama. We're going to be talking about Lamar Jackson in the NFL and just how insane that guy has been for the past few weeks, or really the entire season, even though he has, we'll talk about it. We're also going to talk about the AL Central, the offseason plans of those teams, what a mess that division always seems to be. We're also going to talk a little bit of NBA, and we're going to end up with a few final thoughts on some personal things that I've gone through in the past, and something that one of my, I don't know, I guess you would call him a hero of mine, seems to be going through now. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get into it. We're going to start up with Lamar Jackson. Okay, I've been waiting for Lamar Jackson for forever. It seems like ever since Mike Vick was arrested, went to jail, he came back, he was pretty good, but he was never the same. I've been waiting for Lamar Jackson. I've been waiting for that quarterback that isn't just a good athlete, that isn't just kind of fast, but is insanely fast and can also throw the football good enough to be a factor in the passing game as well. And coming into the draft, the 2018 draft, I wasn't sold that Lamar Jackson was that guy. I thought that he was just a really great athlete who might struggle in the NFL. Well, I have been proven completely wrong, because right now I think Lamar Jackson might be the front runner for MVP. Russell Wilson certainly has a case for it. He does. But Lamar Jackson, what he's doing right now is just, it's incredible. He is Michael Vick 2.0, but possibly better. And that's crazy to say, because Michael Vick came in and he revolutionized the game. But I think one of the big differences is that when Michael Vick came into the league, he was kind of adapting to an NFL game, an NFL playbook that was relatively traditional. He came in 2004, something like that. The NFL still had kind of a certain mindset around how football was supposed to be played. They were far less creative. But now, Harbaugh has implemented this system that is just tailor-made for Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's RPOs all day long. It's quarterback draws. It's short passes that open up the running game. It's like a mix between the West Coast and an RPO and Georgia Tech's triple option, or Paul Johnson's triple option. It's awesome. It's so much fun to watch. And if you're a defense, I mean, we saw what they did to the best defense in the NFL last week, the Patriots. If you're an opposing defense, I don't know how you stop this consistently. You maybe can get lucky, maybe somebody's having an off day, but it's a pretty scary thing when you have a guy that is that athletic. I'd really love to show you this run that he had against the Bengals yesterday, but unfortunately, I'm a bit paranoid about copyright, especially with the NFL or MLB, and they seem to be pretty heavy on the trigger with stuff like that. So I'm not going to show it to you, but I encourage you to go out and watch it for yourself. I understand that it was the Bengals. They are the worst team in football. I think at this point it's undeniable. But still, they're an NFL caliber team, and there was one run, his touchdown run, that made them look like they were in high school. That they did not know how to tackle, that they did not know how to take effective routes to make their tackles. He made them look ridiculous. It was one of the sickest moves. If you guys ever go back and watch a Barry Sanders a highlight reel, it looked a lot like that. It looked like, okay, Lamar Jackson has nowhere to go. He has like 7 defenders around him at this point. And in the blink of an eye, he's in the open field, and you have no idea how he got there. And this isn't a running back that's doing it. It's a quarterback. And then you add on top of that the fact that he went 15 for 17 with a perfect passer rating. I don't care that it was the Bengals. That was as impressive of a performance as I've ever seen from a quarterback, maybe ever, but because I've never seen a quarterback that's that athletic that can throw the ball that well. The combination of the two. I've seen guys that can throw the ball better than Lamar for sure. Maybe you could say Michael Vick was had a bit more deadline speed, but I don't think Michael Vick was as shifty as Lamar is. It's pretty crazy to watch. I'm just so impressed with the guy. I think that he is going to be just incredible in the NFL. The one thing that I really worry about with him is injury, because when you are running, 12, 13 times a game as a quarterback, sometimes you do open yourself up to injury. That's certainly a pretty massive risk. But he seems to do a pretty good job of sliding when he needs to. He does a really great job of avoiding really hard contact, but sometimes in the NFL that doesn't really matter. Just a guy lands the wrong way on your knee and you're done. So, it'd be nice if he could avoid as much contact as possible, but his play style just really, it might not allow for that, and he might have a couple years of his career where he's not able to play because he's hurt. And that would be really unfortunate. But I think that would be an acceptable risk for the Ravens for what you're getting out of him. The one thing that you really just want to avoid big time is an injury that is going to take away his athleticism, that's going to rob him of this incredible gift that God gave him, because it's something else, man. It really is. Okay, moving on to other games in the NFL. The Cowboys and Vikings. Jason Garrett's got to go. He's got to go. I'm sorry. I know Jerry Jones, he loves Jason Garrett. I mean, they're basically married at this point. Even though Jerry has said some things this year that may lead you to indicate that he's thinking about divorce. But Jason's got to go. Jerry's got to pull the trigger. He needs to call Lincoln Riley ASAP. Get him to the NFL. I think that's probably the guy that is going to be the next head coach of the Cowboys. It always seems to be a guy from like Arkansas or Oklahoma, someone in that area that Jerry really knows well. But Jason's got to go. This Cowboy team, I said it in the first episode, I think that they are one of the top 3 most talented teams in the NFL. They have no excuse to be 5-4. They have none. The only win that's even semi-good on their schedule is their win against the Eagles. And, I mean, the Eagles really don't look all that great either. Their other wins, the Giants, the Redskins, I'm not really loving those. I'm just not. And then they have that terrible loss versus the Jets. They lost against the Packers. They lost against the Saints. And now they've lost against the Vikings. And I maintain that I don't think the Vikings, I think they're fool's gold. At this point, they're 7-3, so they're probably going to make the playoffs. But I don't think that they're a real threat to the Super Bowl. So I'm still picking the Cowboys to win the division. I honestly think it might be a bad thing if they do, because at that point, if they did, I'm not sure Jason Garrett would get fired, and I think that would be best for the Cowboys moving forward if he did get fired. So I don't know if that's a great thing that the Cowboy that I still have the Cowboys winning the division, because I don't think Jason Garrett is going to lead them to a Super Bowl, despite how talented they are. Okay, I called it, guys. I called it. I think there was someone that DM'd me in Twitter and told me that I was absolutely nuts for picking the Titans over the Chiefs, with the Chiefs having Patrick Mahomes. Well, they did it. Haha. In your face, sucker. I missed the Cowboys pick. I missed the Packers pick. We'll see how I do in the 49ers pick later on tonight. But I got the Titans and the Chiefs. That was the riskiest pick that I made last episode, and I nailed it. I said that the Titans were going to upset the Chiefs. And they did. It was incredible. The second half, Derrick Henry went off. Ryan Tannehill, he is making the Titans forget Marcus Mariota faster than I think any franchise has ever forgotten a top 3 draft pick like Marcus Mariota. Tannehill, I don't know if he's the future of the Titans. I really don't. I've never been a huge Tannehill guy, but man, he looked good in that last quarter. He really did. That last drive was insanely impressive. And then the blocked kick, it was so much fun, so exciting. The last 2 minutes were incredible. The Titans failed to convert on 4th down. They turned the ball over. The Kansas City, has a chance to put it away. They can't. Then the Titans get the ball back. They go down really quick and score, but then Patrick Mahomes carries the Chiefs down the field to get another shot at a field goal. The field goal's blocked. It was awesome. Great game. Great game. And I'm excited that I got it right, too. That the first pick I ever made on this podcast, and it was just a banger. Absolute banger. Even though I missed the other ones. And the Packers game, the other one that I missed, I think that my reasoning was sound. I said that I thought Aaron Rodgers would struggle. I said that I didn't think he was a great leader, and because of that, I thought that the Panthers would come out and win the game. I was wrong. The Panthers just didn't. Their offense wasn't greased up enough. They couldn't really get anything going. So the Packers won 24-16, but Aaron Rodgers was not great in that game. 17 for 29, 233 yards, 233 yards. I mean, that's okay. No touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, Aaron Rodgers never throws interceptions because he's a big fat pussy. But he just doesn't take risks, and that's probably a good thing. But yeah, he wasn't great. He didn't win that game. The Packer defense kind of won that game. Yeah, he was. I don't know. It's just I'm not a big fan of the Packers and Aaron Rodgers quarterbacked Packers team. There's something about them that always seems like it's on the verge of falling apart. Even though he's so consistent, he's so safe. And he's going to get you a consistent amount of points. And yeah, this year their defense is better than it has been in the past. It's still not amazing, but it's a lot better. So you could make the argument that they're on the verge of being the Super Bowl favorites. But I don't think so. I don't think one of their problems has certainly been their defense in the past, but I don't think that that's the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem is that Aaron Rodgers can never take responsibility for his foibles, his shortcomings. He can never do it, and I think that that's a massive problem. And I don't think it's ever going to change. I don't see Aaron Rodgers winning another Super Bowl. I could be wrong about that. They could win it this year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the defense was always the problem, but I don't see it. Good job. You got the win yesterday, but it's tough for me to see you guys being serious threat, a serious threat to win the NFC or the Super Bowl. The Saints lost to the Falcons. I'm actually not that surprised by this result. Yeah, the Falcons are not great, and the Saints are really good. They may be the best team in the NFC. I still think the 49ers are. So, a lot of people might be pretty shocked by that. But the Falcons and the Saints always have this just kind of crazy relationship where when one of them's good and the other one's bad, that the bad team will beat the other team. They hate each other so much. It's one of the most underrated rivalries in the NFL. If the Falcons never get up for another game all year, that is the game that they'll get up for. That's the game that they'll come out and rip some heads off. And they did. They won that game. Not that big of a shocker to me, though. And then finally, the Dolphins. What are you guys doing? You guys had a clear plan coming into the year, and that was to fail miserably, to fall flat on your stupid faces, to trade away all your good players, get draft picks. I loved it. I love tanking. I think tanking works. Tanking is a very, very, very good idea if you're in a position like the Dolphins were in at the beginning of the year. And I think that they did it really, really well. I do. I think that they accumulated draft picks that can get them draft picks in the future. I like the draft picks that they got because they're going to be kind of mid-round picks. And then they're going to get a really high pick with their own. They can trade down, get more future picks. They've got future picks. They did it terrifically. But what are you doing? You're playing the Colts. Okay? Nobody is going to fault you for losing that game. Now you just go out and win 2 in a row? Win 2 in a row. There were people at the beginning of the year that said that the Alabama Crimson Tide could probably beat you, if you played college rules. And I wasn't that skeptical of that because you guys were freaking awful. You were awful. Why did you decide to get competent? It's a terrible idea. Tank for Tua or tank for whoever is out the window. Now the Bengals are the champions of the tank. I'd be really happy if I was a Bengals fan, and if I was a Dolphins fan, I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs, stop it. Stop it. What do you want to pick, 4th? You want to pick 4th? No. At this point, I don't think you're going to get 1st because the Bengals might win 1 game. They're not winning 2, in my opinion. But yeah, the Dolphins' plan of failure is failing, and if I were a Dolphins fan, I would be super bummed out about it because I don't know if you're going to get the quarterback that you want in next year's draft. I really don't at this point. You guys could end up picking 3rd, 4th. Stop winning. It's not a good idea. Stop it. But okay, let's move on to college football. Super, super exciting weekend of college football. Before we talk about the games that everyone cares about, just want to give a huge shout out to Southern Miss, my alma mater, the team that I love, beating UAB 37-2. Incredible. UAB has been a huge monkey on our back for a really long time. So it was great to get that win versus them. But anyways, moving on. Oklahoma is done. I don't really foresee any way of Oklahoma getting into the college football playoff without some serious help. Their loss to Kansas State was just too bad. If they were to come back this week, beat Iowa State comfortably, then I would have said there may have been an outside chance, but they beat Iowa State by 1 stinking point, 42-41. That is not good enough. That is not good enough. That is almost as good of a loss as good as a loss in my mind. It's not, but it does you no favors with the College Football Playoff Committee. They could win out, beat Baylor, beat or win the rest of their games, win the championship against whoever. I don't think it's going to be good enough unless a whole lot of teams in front of them start losing a lot. So I don't think Oklahoma is going anywhere. I think that Saturday, even though they won, I think that was probably the nail in the coffin for them. And I just got to talk about Baylor and Minnesota. Baylor and Minnesota is so much fun to me. It's so much fun. This happens every year, and I always get really excited about it, and usually I'm let down. But I actually kind of believe in at least one of those teams, Baylor. I kind of believe in Baylor, that Baylor could maybe run the table, go undefeated, and just barely sneak into the playoff. Because if Baylor runs the table, Baylor is more than likely going to be in the playoff, because I just don't know how you could reasonably argue that an undefeated Power 5 team that wins their championship it can't be in the playoffs when there are teams that have dropped a game. I don't see how you could reasonably argue that. Yeah, I know SEC, blah blah blah, but I don't buy that argument unless there are some distinguishing factors in there, or undistinguishable factors like the same record. Okay, lean SEC. Neither won their championship. Okay, lean SEC. that those arguments are fine. But when you have a 13-0 team that in an 11-1 team, yeah, okay, the SEC team may have played a tougher schedule, but they lost. They're out. They're out. You have to give the nod to the undefeated Power 5 team. So if Minnesota and or Baylor go undefeated, I don't know how you could reasonably keep them out in lieu of a one-loss team. I don't see how so if either one of them goes undefeated, I think you have to let them in. I just do. And it would be amazing. It would be awesome. The college football needs more Cinderella stories. I'm so fucking sick of Alabama, Clemson national championships, of Ohio State, Oklahoma always being in the national championship, LSU, whoever. It's like the same 6 or 7 teams every single year. It's so boring. It's not fun. You have to have some parity for it to be fun. And if you want the definition of parity, it's Baylor and Minnesota. And Minnesota just pulled off possibly the biggest upset of the year. Nobody believed in Minnesota. No, everybody was like, okay, they haven't played anybody. They almost got beat by this team. They almost got beat by that team. Yeah, they're undefeated, but they are the most unimpressive, undefeated team of all time. I would argue that might be Clemson, which we'll talk about in a minute, but Minnesota shut everybody up yesterday with their win against Penn State, because Penn State is no joke. They are no joke. And Minnesota won. They won. They didn't beat them down. They didn't, destroy them or anything like that, but they just flat out won. And that's an insanely impressive win. Yeah, it's not LSU over Bama. It's not that, but it's very, very, very impressive. And if they can somehow win the rest of their regular season games and then somehow pull off the upset against Ohio State, which I'm very skeptical of, they'll be in the playoff as well. So I love those two teams. I wish them all the best. I hope you guys go undefeated. I hope you guys pull off as many upsets as you can. Good luck to you. I'm always disappointed by you guys. Don't disappoint me this year. At least one of you. I'm not asking for both. Just one of you make it. Right now, LSU is the clear favorite in the college landscape with their win over Alabama. And it was pretty convincing as well. Pretty convincing win. So, yeah, I just don't see any other team that is really challenging for the status of best team in college football right now. It's got to be LSU. Bama, I actually think that this is not that great of a Bama team this year. Coming into the year, I said that I didn't think that I thought that they might be unbeatable. I really did, but they have shown far more holes than I thought that they would. And yeah, they just they're probably a playoff worthy team. They're probably one of the best 4 teams in the country, but I don't think that they are a threat. Well, they are a threat for the national championship because it's Alabama, but I don't think that they are clearly the best team at any point this season. I don't think they've been the clear best team. I think at this point it's LSU. Sorry about the cuts there. I've had like 5 phone calls since I started recording this. It's the nature of the beast, I suppose. But LSU, like I was saying, LSU, I think, is the clear favorite right now to win the national championship. And then I think Ohio State is the clear number 2 right behind them. Kind of an incredible stat. They've played 3 ranked opponents this year, and they've beaten those ranked opponents by an average of 37 points. That is an impressive statistic. Especially for a team that isn't Alabama, that's, an Alabama or an LSU playing out of conference games against like the 20th ranked opponent and beating them by 50. This is Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, one of them was Cincinnati, but it's still very, very impressive and decisive wins for Ohio State, and they really haven't been challenged all year. Clemson, on the other hand, may have the easiest path to the college football playoff in the history of college football, or to the national championship in the history of college football. I've been looking at their schedule, and it is so insanely, brutally soft. I don't know if Clemson gets into the college football playoff this year and you left Central Florida out 2 years ago when Central Florida was undefeated. They beat Auburn in the bowl game, even though that's, hindsight or whatever. But they had been undefeated. They had beat like 4 ranked teams. They had 4 ranked wins on their schedule. Yeah, I mean, they weren't insane ranked wins, but they were ranked wins. I don't know how you can argue for keeping Central Florida out and putting Clemson in other than this lazy ass argument of, oh, they're not a Power 5 school, so they can't play. They can't play because they're not Power 5. They don't have this arbitrary conference that they're in. Central Florida was one of the 4 best teams in the country that year. I have no doubt in my mind about that. Clemson, I have a whole lot of doubts about them being one of the 4 best teams in the country. They might be. But man, they haven't beaten anybody, really. I mean, it's just a bunch of duds. They almost lost to who was it? North Carolina, who's not great. I mean, the ACC is very weak this year, very, very weak. And their out of conference is just as weak. So I'm not in love with Clemson right now. Obviously, if they go undefeated, they're gonna make it, but I think that it points to a broken system. The fact that Clemson, nobody even thinks about it. Yeah, they'll get in. Nobody even looks at what they've done. But Central Florida, for whatever reason, people just kind of zoned out. They didn't even think about it. Obviously, Central Florida shouldn't get in. It's a broken system. And I think it's one that needs to be fixed. But okay, moving on. We're going to be talking about the AL Central quickly. I'm not going to go as in-depth with the AL Central as I did with the AL East, simply because I don't think the AL Central is as interesting as the AL East is. And that's largely because the AL Central is just so bad. Why is this division always so bad? It seems like that every year there'll be like one team from the division who is pretty good, and then all the other ones are pretty terrible. Now, last year was a bit of an exception because the Indians were okay too, and then the Twins were really good. But does anybody really believe that the Twins are at the forefront of a sustainable competitive window? I mean, they might be good next year, but their roster isn't like super young. It's not a traditional, usually when a team is like losing, great year, it's because that team has gotten a lot younger. They've brought in a lot of young talent. And that's not really the case with the Twins. They have a lot of veterans on their team. They have some interesting young pieces too, but it's mostly like, I mean, obviously they have a lot of power and stuff, but it's not just, it's unique because they're not that young. I'll just say that. So I think the Twins' focus this offseason should be to do whatever they can to keep this window open, because I don't think that they can just kind of stand back on their heels and truly be a World Series competitor next year. I think that they're going to have to be semi-aggressive. That may mean trading a couple prospects that you really like. Kirillikoff or whatever his name is, might have to go to bring in supplementary pieces. I don't think you have to go crazy. I don't think that you have to open up the pocketbooks to a ridiculous margin, but I think that you have to be at least somewhat aggressive, because if you don't, then you are going to be relying solely upon the AL Central being terrible for you to get into the playoffs. And yeah, that might get you there, but I don't know if that's going to get you to a World Series, even though baseball has incredible parity and, anybody, as we saw this year, a wild card won it. So, once you get in, anything can happen, but I think the Twins need some help. Maybe not to compete in their division, but to compete for a World Series, I think they do. The Indians need to make a decision. they really need to make a choice here, because are they willing to pay the money that it's going to take to keep this window open for 1 to 2 more years? Because I really think that that's all that it's going to last, is about 1 to 2 more years. There we go, fucking spilling tea on myself. I don't think it's going to last that much longer. Or do they need to start transitioning to a short rebuild now? Because this is the offseason that choice needs to be made. Do you trade Corey Kluber? Do you trade Francisco Lindor? All these guys. Because you can trade a lot of these guys and keep a foundation that can really be something special for the net. Once you've done your 1 to 2 year rebuild, you've gotten the prospects that you need, you've gotten the money that you need to get the guys that you want. It's they need to make a decision on that, because I don't know if this current roster is capable of winning a World Series. I think they're going to have to add to it, and I don't know that they have the money to do that. So if you're not going to be competing for a World Series, or possibly even your division next year, does it not make more sense to trade Kluber, to maybe think about trading Lindor? And if you're not going to do that, then why not try to take some of these younger guys that you have, Lindor, and try to extend them now? Because you're going to have these guys on your team if you plan on competing for the next, 2, at the most 3 years. If any of these guys walk, it all falls apart. You have to keep them all together, except possibly for Kluber, because Kluber is getting older anyway, and you can maybe find a replacement for him, even though he does have a very relatively team-friendly contract when he's performing. But I think Kluber is a massive risk. I think maybe a great option for them would be to trade Kluber to get back some prospects to help in the future, but then use that money that you get from trading Kluber to go out and try to find a replacement for him. Maybe a guy like Jake Odorizzi or Zach Wheeler or someone like that, because I don't think they would cost you that much more. And it's possible that they're even better than Kluber next year. Who knows? Because Kluber is getting a lot older. So maybe that's an option. Maybe the option is to keep everyone else, but trade Kluber and replace him, strengthen your farm, and maybe spend just a few $1 million more for a guy who is honestly probably more of a sure thing than Kluber at this point. So the Indians have a very confusing offseason. When I was running through all this, I was like, man, I just don't really know. And then the White Sox, before we talk about the Royals and the Tigers, the White Sox, they also need to make a choice. They need to make a choice on whether or not now is the time to start to try to compete. I don't think it is. I think that there's still a year, probably just a year away. Maybe 2, but I think just a year. They have a very solid foundation. They have Moncada. They have Jimenez. They have all these really young, Tim Anderson, really young, intriguing guys who are very talented. There's a lot to like about the White Sox, but there's also some pretty substantial holes on that roster that they could fill. They could fill them this offseason, and they could possibly field a competitive team. But I do worry that doing so would shorten your long-term competitive window. When the White Sox started this rebuild, it really looked like they were building towards something that was going to be very, 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 very sustainable. And I think if you wait a year, if you wait a year before dipping your toe into the competitive pond, basically, and let this thing grow organically, I think that you guys are going to have a long, long window of success, 6-7 years of competitiveness. And in baseball, that's really what you want. Whereas if you guys go for it this year, you guys could challenge the Twins or possibly the Indians for the division. You could. I see a pathway for you guys to do that. But I do think that you would shorten your window at least by a year or two, possibly pretty substantially. So if it were me, I would say just kind of wait, let it grow organically, maybe make a few supplementary moves to see if the kids can play really well next year, better than you're projecting, and you guys could maybe make a surprise run, kind of like the way the Twins did. Maybe the division is even worse next year than it was last year. Maybe you guys could make a run then. But other than that, I don't really want you guys to go all out just yet. And then finally, the Tigers and the Royals. Both teams in extremely tough spots. Kind of not really at the outset of their rebuilds. They've really been going on for a year plus, but really poorly run rebuilds, in my opinion. The Royals tried to compete for a year too long, and they ended up losing a bunch of guys to free agency. They made some pretty poor trades to kind of undercut their farm. Their farm isn't the best right now. It's not as bad as it was, but it's still not the best. Not as good as it needs to be for a team in the spot like the Royals are in. They're also keeping Whit Merrifield, which just makes no sense to me at all, because Whit Merrifield is an older guy. Yeah, he's great. I love Whit Merrifield. He's a great player, but you're wasting his value on the Royals. Trade him away to a team that could use him. Every team could use Whit Merrifield. He's incredible. He could play anywhere. Good bat. He's great. He's fantastic. You could get a lot back for him. Trade him. Let him go. Let him get out of Kansas City, because it's ridiculous. Why are you keeping him? Kansas City? Dayton Moore? Why are you keeping him? It makes no sense. Get out of here. Dayton Moore is still the GM for the Kansas City Royals, right? I'm not wrong in that assessment, am I? And then the Tigers, it's kind of the same thing. What are you doing with Matthew Boyd? Why didn't you trade him at the trade deadline? Every single day that you hold on to Matthew Boyd, his value gets less and less and less in trade. Every single day. Trade him. Let him go. Trade him to a contender. You'll get a lot back for him. You'll supplement your farm. You'll get guys to pair with. And the Tigers have a better farm than the Royals right now, in my opinion. I like it a lot better. But they have pieces that they could trade. Now, I think the Tigers did a better job this past trade deadline than the Royals did. The Tigers moved Shane Green. They got Joey Wentz back. And Travis Demerit, which was really interesting. I've always been a big Travis Demerit fan. I was kind of sad that the Braves traded him, because I really thought that he would be a good utility piece on the Braves. And then they traded Nick Castellanos as well, got back some okay I thought that they kind of underperformed in both of those trades. I don't think that they got back exactly requisite value. Maybe they did in the Shane Green trade, because I think everyone was kind of overrating Shane Green from the beginning, but that perception also has value, and I think that they kind of missed out on that. But they need to trade Boyd. And they have a few other pieces that they need to trade as well. They have useful pieces that could get them back some returns. And I know that for a team in a spot like the Orioles or the Royals or the Tigers, that my answer is always just, well, take all your good players and trade them away. And a lot of the times, yeah, it is. Now there are unique cases where that isn't the case, like the Braves with Freddie Freeman in 2014. I thought that they should have kept him because he was young. He was controllable. They had just signed him to an extension. I thought the same thing about Andrelton Simmons, even though they ended up trading him away. I thought that both of those guys could have been cornerstones for what they're doing now. And that would have been great. You know, it's not a sin to waste a player's value, but you have to assess how old that player is. How good is that player going to be when we are competitive? Does anybody think Matthew Boyd or Whit Merrifield are going to be elite players or even very, very good players by the time the Royals or the Tigers are competitive again? Because I don't. I don't at all. So if you disagree with that, let me know in the comments. I'll be really interested to hear your reasoning. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA. We're going to talk a little bit about some other stuff. Then we're going to get out of here, okay? First thing, are the Phoenix Suns for real? I don't know. I don't buy it, man. I really don't. The NBA is a star-driven league. It's all about the stars. You know, the Kawhis, the LeBrons, the Anthony Davis, Giannis, all those guys. Who do the Suns have? Devin Booker? Is he a star? No. Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, Dario Saric. I don't really buy it. The West is so strong this year. I mean, there are probably 10 to 11 teams in the West that could steamroll the East. It's pretty crazy just how many good teams there are. And if the Phoenix Suns were in the East, then maybe they would be a factor. Not contenders, really, but a factor. But in the West, they're 6-3 right now. They had a good win last night, but I don't buy it. I think that they are the Minnesota Vikings of the NBA right now. And it's still early. You know, teams are still trying to figure each other out. So, yeah, I'm not a big believer in the Suns right now. But I am a big believer in the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors last night beat the Los Angeles Lakers 113-104. I love Pascal Siakam. I love the marginal pieces that they have around him. Fred VanVleet is tremendous. Yeah, they lost Kawhi Leonard, and that probably takes them out of consideration for the NBA championship. Almost certainly does. But man, they have the foundation right now to be legit for a long time. I really love Pascal Siakam. I think he's going to be a star. I do. Bit older for a guy that to be talking about that or like that about a guy, but he's really, really good. He's improved tremendously. Nikola Jokic is my favorite player in the NBA right now. I love him. I love everything about him. I think he is absolutely revolutionary. They just won 100-98 over the Timberwolves. The Nuggets are a massive factor in the West. You can't say they're the favorites with the Lakers and the Clippers doing what they're doing. Even the Utah Jazz are pretty good. You know, there are a lot of great teams in the West. So I don't really think there is a favorite, but I don't think the Nuggets are really among them, even though they're very, very good. It's just hard to say, really. But Nikola Jokic is something else, man. They may get the number 1 seed because they're not going to take off as often as, you know, guys on the Clippers or the Lakers are going to do. They're not going to use time management or whatever. I love Jokic, though. He's incredible. I've never seen, or I guess I have seen, but I've never seen a guy that looks as unathletic as Nikola Jokic looks do the things that he does. He is like a giant point guard with his passing. He is an incredible passer. He's a triple-double threat every single night. Defensively, he could use a little bit of work. I think he's better this year defensively than he was last year, though. And if he improves in that regard, he's going to be in like top 5 NBA player territory if he improves defensively. But he's going to drop 25 a night. He's going to give you at least 8 assists a night. He's going to give you 10 to 12 rebounds per night. That's something special. He is no joke, and neither are the Denver Nuggets. And then finally, the Cleveland Cavaliers right now are 4-5, and I've kind of, I live very close to New Orleans, so I'm kind of become a bit of a New Orleans Pelicans fan. Not a huge fan or anything like that, but I like what they're doing. I like when teams get young and exciting and things like that. I get sold on that very easily. And with the Pelicans, obviously they've done that with Lonzo, with Zion, all those guys. But it's so funny to me to be a big Pelicans fan, but be insanely interested in what the Cleveland Cavaliers are doing. And this is unique to the NBA. And why is that? Why would I be interested in the Cleveland Cavaliers if I'm a Pelicans fan? Well, that's because the Pelicans own the Cleveland Cavaliers draft pick for next season, but only if, and this is the part that's unique to the NBA, and I love it, only if the Cleveland Cavaliers pick falls outside the top 10. They have draft pick protection on their draft pick if it's inside the top 10. If it's inside the top 10, they get to keep it, and they have to give the Pelicans a couple second round picks in a couple years. I love that system, man. I do. I don't know who came up with it. I don't know why it's in place, but it's so interesting to me that you can be a fan of one team, but be immensely interested in going on in what's going on in another another town. The Pelicans are hoping that the Cavs win a ton. They're hoping that they make the playoffs in the East, even though they're probably not. They just really hope that that pick falls outside the top 10, because it'd be way better to have the 12th pick in the draft than to have 2 second-round picks in 2022 and 2023 or whatever it would be. It'd be way better for the Pelicans. They could go from just having one draft pick next year, one first-round draft pick next year, to having like the 3rd pick overall and the 11th or 12th pick overall. So interesting to me to see that dynamic in play, and it's happening with a bunch of other teams too. Like the Thunder have a bunch of picks, and it's just awesome. I love that. I wish that other other leagues, that the NFL would adopt that. Even though it wouldn't work as well in the MLB or the NFL, because they would also need to implement a draft lottery, which might not be a terrible idea. But how much fun would it be to like have the Pittsburgh Steelers trade their first round pick to the Miami Dolphins, but it has top 10 protection on it. So, if the Steelers end up being really bad, they get to keep their first round pick, but now they have to send 2 third-round picks to the Dolphins in exchange for that. It's just a great system. I love it. It can be very complicated, but I love it. All right, finally, I want to talk about a hero of mine. And that it sounds kind of cringe to say hero. I understand that. It sounds very boomer-ish. But Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson's been MIA for a month or two now. And it seems that the reason why is that over the course of the past year or so, with all the fame, all the, adulation that he's received, that he developed an addiction to, it seems like anti-anxiety medication, which is completely understandable. Completely understandable. Right? I mean, that's, given the amount of pressure he's under, something like that is bound to happen. But I think that he does risk being judged by a lot of people who were saying, well, aren't you supposed to be giving life advice, and you go and you get an addiction? Like, what a fuck up, right? He's not. A lot of you guys know this about me. I'm a former addict. They say that you're never a former addict, but you're always an addict, and it's always a struggle and all that. I don't really buy in. I guess semantically it's true. Like, I'll never not have a point in my life where I'm not at least tempted to do something that I shouldn't do, like take a painkiller or get too drunk or whatever. I have a very addictive personality in general, and it's always been a problem for me. But I got help. Jordan Peterson seems to be getting help. And when I learned about Jordan Peterson, it really made me start to think about, the people that watch my channel. I know a lot of you guys are a lot younger, and I don't want to come off as like, just say no. That 80s Reagan shit. I don't want to do that. But be really careful when you're growing up. Be really careful, because I was very, 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 very careful growing up. I never had a sip of alcohol until I was 22. Never took a sip of alcohol until I was 22 years old. Never did any drugs never smoked weed or anything like that until I was 23. I actually became a drug addict before I ever took a sip of alcohol, or before I ever smoked weed. I was an addict before that. And it happened because I stopped being careful. My girlfriend had broke up with me. I was very depressed. And I had a problem with my gallbladder. I had to have gallbladder surgery to have it removed. The doctor prescribes me some painkillers. I start taking the painkillers, and not only does it take my pain away, but I'm not so depressed anymore. In fact, I feel like I could conquer the world. I'm doing great in school. I feel good. Everything's going great. But I don't realize what's happening at the time. I really don't. It's like a blink of an eye. And I was a different person. I couldn't live without it. I would take it and take it and take it. And then I found out that my neighbor had sold them. My neighbor a few doors down from me at my apartment complex sold them. So I started taking more and more. I started to buy them. And I didn't even realize what was happening to me. But then one day I ran out. I didn't have any. And I got really, really sick. Like sicker than I guarantee you've ever been in your life. Unless you have like cancer or something. You've never felt this bad in your life. I promise. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's the worst pain in the world. Worst sickness in the world. And it's, I realized then I had a problem, but I didn't care. And it went on for another year. Then about another 6 months. It was about a year and a half. And then finally I realized, okay, I'm about to die. I am about to die. I have a choice here. Either I can keep doing this and I can die in oblivion, you know. I'd be happy. I'd be ODing. I would be super happy about dying, but I feel like I would regret it the next day. Let's just say that. Or I can get help. And I got help, and for the most part, I'm better. I still struggle with things, but I'm better. Jordan Peterson, I think, just wasn't careful. He wasn't careful enough. And I love Jordan Peterson. I really do. And it doesn't take away from any of the things that he's taught, any of his ideas. I still think he's still probably my favorite person in the internet dark web circle. I love him. I hope he gets better. And it seems like he is doing a lot better. His daughter has posted a lot of stuff on Twitter about this, and he seems to be doing a lot better. If there's anybody that can beat something like this, it's him. And I hope that he comes back. And I hope that you guys, I know a lot of people can get judgy about drugs and things like that. They can get very judgy. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you've never experienced it, it's very hard to understand what that other person is going through. A lot of the times you don't even really, you choose to be a drug addict, but on some level you don't, because it just kind of grabs you when you're not looking. It a lot of times it happens that way. So try to understand why things happen, not just the fact that they're happening, but try to understand why. Try to empathize with it as best you can, and help when you can, because a lot of people need it. I needed it, and on some level I still need it. But yeah, just be careful, be empathetic when it's appropriate, not all the time. Empathy is not always a good thing. And don't be so judgmental. But okay, guys, that is going to do it. Please, guys, leave a like on this video, and please, I'm freaking begging you guys, share this with a friend. It's going to be very hard for me to get this off the ground if you guys don't help me out. Share it. Follow me on Twitter at Beanie Antics. My name on there is Outraged Over Everything, but the @ is Beanie Antics. That would be tremendous of you. Let's try to get my Twitter following up. I've been stuck at like 1,100 for forever. Let's get that up to 2,000. by 2040. If I can get my Twitter following to 2,000 by the year 2040, I will die a happy man. So yeah, I love you guys. I will see you guys later. But until then, peace.